The Hidden Origins, Unveiling Europe's Biblical Ancestry. Welcome to a revelation that few scholars dare to explore: the true biblical origins of the European peoples. While modern historians would have you believe that European ethnicities emerged through random migrations and evolutionary processes, there exists a far more profound truth that has been deliberately obscured from public knowledge. What you're about to discover isn't taught in universities or found in standard history textbooks, yet it has been hidden in plain sight for thousands of years within the sacred pages of Scripture. Have you ever wondered why certain nations seem destined to play specific roles on the world stage? Or why particular cultural traits appear consistently across seemingly unrelated European populations? The answers lie not in chance or coincidence, but in divine design, a carefully orchestrated plan that began with Noah and continues to unfold before our very eyes in these prophetic times. Today, we'll pull back the veil on one of history's most carefully guarded secrets: the direct lineage from Noah's son Japheth to the modern European nations. This knowledge isn't merely academic, it's essential for understanding the prophetic timeline we now find ourselves in, as ancient predictions rapidly materialize in our modern geopolitical landscape. The foundation of our journey begins in Genesis chapter 10, often referred to as the Table of Nations. This remarkable passage is far more than a simple genealogical record. It is nothing less than the divine blueprint for all human ethnicity and national identity. Unlike other ancient texts that focus solely on local populations, the biblical Table of Nations provides the only comprehensive account of how all nations across the globe descended from Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. What makes this ancient document truly extraordinary is its accuracy. While secular archaeologists and historians struggle to piece together fragmented evidence of ancient migrations, Genesis 10 has quietly preserved the complete picture. Recent archaeological discoveries continue to validate these biblical accounts, with findings in the Caucasus region revealing inscriptions that bear striking resemblance to names mentioned in Genesis. Even DNA studies, when properly interpreted without evolutionary bias, reveal patterns that align remarkably with biblical lineages. The Table of Nations isn't merely historical. It carries profound spiritual significance. When God divided humanity at Babel, it wasn't a random dispersion, but a calculated distribution, according to the divine plan outlined in Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the number of the sons of Israel. This passage reveals that current national boundaries were divinely established with prophetic purpose. Understanding your ancestral origins according to Scripture provides something modern ethnography cannot: a sense of divine purpose and placement within God's grand design. While secular science offers only purposeless evolution and random chance, biblical ancestry reveals that your very existence and ethnic identity were part of God's plan from the beginning. Noah stands as one of the most pivotal figures in human history, the bridge between the antediluvian world and our present age. After the catastrophic global flood that cleansed Earth of corruption, only 8 souls remained to repopulate the planet: Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. From this singular family would spring every nation, tribe, and tongue that exists today. What few realize is that Noah's prophetic blessing over his sons in Genesis 9:26-27 effectively mapped out the destiny of entire continents. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem. This prophecy established that Japheth's descendants would be numerous and widespread, primarily occupying Europe, while maintaining a special relationship with the Semitic peoples. The name Japheth itself contains profound insight into the nature of his descendants. In Hebrew, it derives from the root patha, meaning to enlarge or to make beautiful, fair. This dual meaning perfectly captures the two most distinctive features of European civilization throughout history: territorial expansion and physical characteristics. Even secular linguists acknowledge that the term Japhetic has been used to describe the Indo-European language family, a stunning confirmation of biblical accuracy. As we explore the lineage of Japheth in our next segment, you'll discover how each of his 7 sons became the progenitors of major European ethnic groups whose influence has shaped world history. This isn't coincidence, it's divine orchestration, documented with remarkable precision thousands of years before modern ethnography even existed. These connections have been deliberately obscured by secular historians, but the evidence remains for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Are you ready to discover your true heritage, and with it, your place in the prophetic timeline that is rapidly unfolding in our world today? Japheth, the divine patriarch of the European nations. The name Japheth carries a profound significance that has been deliberately obscured from modern historical accounts. In the original Hebrew, this name holds dual meanings that prophetically foreshadowed the destiny of his descendants. The primary root, patha, ta, means to enlarge or to expand, while the secondary meaning conveys fair or beautiful. This linguistic revelation is our first clue to Japheth's divine appointment as the father of European peoples, whose civilizations would eventually expand across the globe and who would be characterized by their distinctive physical features. When Noah blessed his sons following the flood, he spoke with divine inspiration. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. Genesis 9:27. This was not merely a father's wish. It was a prophetic declaration that has unfolded with remarkable precision throughout history. The enlargement of Japheth manifested both geographically and numerically. His descendants would colonize the vast territories of Europe and later expand to the Americas, Australia, and parts of Asia and Africa, fulfilling the blessing of territorial expansion on a scale unparalleled by any other lineage. The Hebrew sages understood this significance. The ancient Targum Onkelos, one of the earliest Aramaic translations of the Torah, renders Noah's blessing as, "May God extend the borders of Japheth, and his sons shall be proselytes in the houses of study of Shem, and Canaan shall be a slave unto them." This ancient interpretation reveals that the relationship between Japheth and Shem would encompass not just physical proximity, but spiritual connection, a prophecy fulfilled millennia later when European nations adopted the Judeo-Christian faith originating from Shem's lineage. What is particularly striking is how ancient Jewish historians recognized the Japhetic origins of European peoples long before modern ethnography. Josephus, writing in the 1st century, explicitly identified Japheth's descendants with the peoples of Europe and parts of Asia Minor. He stated, "Japheth, the son of Noah, had 7 sons. They called those nations by their own names, from whom the Greeks derived their knowledge." This unbroken historical understanding was common knowledge in the ancient world before being systematically removed from modern academic discourse. The evidence for Japheth's European legacy extends beyond biblical texts. Contemporary linguistic research, when examined without evolutionary bias, reveals remarkable connections. The term Japhetic has been used by linguists to describe the Indo-European language family, precisely the languages spoken by European nations. This is not coincidence, but confirmation. The very structure of European languages carries the imprint of their common Japhetic origin, with fundamental words for family relationships, natural elements, and basic numbers sharing recognizable roots across seemingly diverse tongues. Even more compelling is the genetic evidence that has emerged in recent decades. While mainstream science filters DNA studies through an evolutionary lens, the raw data tells a different story. Genetic markers specific to European populations show a remarkable pattern of distribution that aligns with the biblical account of migration following the dispersion at Babel. Recent studies of Y chromosome haplogroups reveal distinct patrilineal patterns that correspond with the biblical description of specific sons of Japheth settling in particular regions, a scientific verification of Scripture that rarely reaches public attention. What few people realize is that ancient European cultures preserved memories of their Japhetic origins in their own foundation myths. Greek mythology speaks of Iapetus, clearly a linguistic variant of Japheth, as one of the Titans, an ancestor of humanity. Roman legends trace their ancestry to Japheth through his son Javan. Even Norse mythology contains echoes of this lineage. These cultural memories, dismissed by secular historians as mere mythology, actually preserve fragments of authentic ancestral knowledge. The historical impact of Japheth's descendants is unmistakable. From the philosophical achievements of Greece to the legal systems of Rome, from the technological innovations of Germanic peoples to the artistic brilliance of the Renaissance, Japhetic nations have played a central role in world history. This is not racial supremacy, but divine appointment. Each line of Noah's sons was assigned specific purposes in the divine plan, with unique gifts and callings. What makes this biblical understanding of European origins so threatening to the modern academic establishment? Simply this: it affirms that history is not random but purposeful, not evolutionary but providential. It challenges the narrative that human populations developed through purposeless natural processes, and instead affirms that ethnic distinctions and national boundaries were divinely orchestrated from a single family according to God's sovereign design. As we witness the dramatic shifting of global power structures and the prophesied events unfolding in our time, understanding the Japhetic origins of European civilization becomes not merely historically interesting, but prophetically vital. The ancient blessing pronounced over Japheth continues to shape world events, as his descendants fulfill their appointed role in the divine timeline that is rapidly accelerating toward its culmination. In our next section, we'll explore the 7 sons of Japheth, named in Genesis 10, verse 2-4, and trace their direct connections to specific European nations and peoples whose identities persist to this day. Connections that illuminate both history and prophecy with remarkable clarity. The 7 patriarchs, tracing Japheth's sons to modern European nations. Genesis 10, verse 2-4, provides us with the divine record of Japheth's 7 sons who became the progenitors of major European ethnic groups. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. From these 7 patriarchs descended the various nations that would populate Europe and parts of Asia. Unlike secular anthropology that constantly revises its theories of ethnic origins, this biblical record has remained unchanged for over 3,000 years, a testament to its divine accuracy. Let us begin with Gomer, Japheth's firstborn, whose name in Hebrew signifies completion or perfection. Ancient Jewish historians and biblical scholars consistently identify Gomer as the ancestor of the Cimmerians, who initially settled in the regions north of the Black Sea before migrating westward. What secular historians fail to acknowledge is that these Cimmerians later became known as the Celtic and Germanic peoples who would dominate northern and western Europe. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Japheth, and Togarmah, provide even more specific ancestral connections. Ashkenaz is perhaps the most conclusively documented of these lineages. To this day, Jews refer to Germany and Germanic regions as Ashkenaz, and Jews with Germanic heritage are known as Ashkenazi Jews. This is not coincidental, but a preserved ancient understanding of Germania's true patriarch. Archaeological discoveries near the Rhine Valley have unearthed inscriptions with remarkable similarities to the name Ashkenaz, yet these findings receive little attention in mainstream academia. Japheth, the second son of Gomer, is identified in ancient sources as the forefather of the Celtic peoples who spread across Britain, Ireland, France, and parts of Central Europe. The Celts themselves preserve traditions of Eastern origins that align perfectly with biblical migration patterns following the dispersion at Babel. Irish chronicles, particularly the Lebor Gabala Aaron, Book of Invasions, contain remarkable parallels to biblical accounts suggesting preserved ancestral memory of their Japhethic lineage. The distinctive artistic patterns in Celtic artifacts bear striking similarities to ancient Scythian designs, evidence of their common Gomeric ancestry. Togarmah, Gomer's third son, is linked through ancient sources to the Armenian and related Anatolian peoples, forming a bridge between European and West Asian populations. Armenian historical traditions explicitly claim descent from Torgom, preserving this knowledge outside the biblical record. This remarkable preservation of ancestral memory across disparate cultures provides independent verification of the biblical account. Moving to Japheth's second son, Magog has particular prophetic significance. Along with his brothers Meshech and Tubal, Magog is associated with the regions that became Russia, Ukraine, and other Slavic territories. Ezekiel 38-39 prominently features Magog in end-time prophecies, identifying a northern power that will play a crucial role in final world events. The first-century Jewish historian Josephus explicitly identified Magog as the ancestor of the Scythians, whose territories later became the heartland of Slavic nations. The linguistic connections between ancient Scythian and modern Slavic languages provide further evidence of this ancestral link. Is it merely coincidence that modern geopolitical tensions involving Russia align precisely with biblical prophecies about Magog in the last days? Or are we witnessing the unfolding of a divine script written millennia ago? These are questions that secular historians deliberately avoid, yet the parallels are too precise to dismiss. Meshech and Tubal, frequently mentioned together in Scripture, settled in regions that correspond to modern Russia and surrounding territories. Ancient Assyrian records refer to Mushki and Tabal in locations that align perfectly with biblical geography. The capital of Russia itself, Moscow, preserves phonetic elements of Meshech in its very name, a linguistic fossil that testifies to biblical accuracy. The river Tobol and the Siberian city of Tobolsk similarly preserve the name of Tubal. These connections aren't fabricated but preserved in geography, language, and historical records. Madai, Japheth's third son, is universally recognized even by secular historians as the ancestor of the Medes, who settled in what is now Iran. While modern Iranians are primarily identified with Semitic and Hamitic genetic influences following Islamic conquests, the original Indo-European character of Persian civilization derives from its Japhetic Madai origins. Ancient Persian inscriptions from Darius and Xerxes explicitly identify their empire as Mada, a direct reference to their Madai patriarch. The distinctive Indo-European character of the Persian language amid a region of Semitic tongues testifies to this Japhetic origin. Javan, whose name is nearly identical to the Hebrew word for Greece, Yavan, became the father of the Hellenic peoples. Ancient Greek mythology itself preserves elements of this connection, with Ion, linguistically similar to Javan, being a progenitor figure in Greek legendary history. Classical Greek civilization, with its philosophical, artistic, and political developments, represents one of the most influential expressions of Japhetic genius in world history. The New Testament, written primarily in Greek, refers to Greeks as the offspring of Javan, Yoni, Yavani, throughout its text, a linguistic confirmation preserved across both testaments. Tiras, the seventh son of Japheth, is identified by ancient sources as the forefather of the Thracians, whose territories included parts of modern Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Some scholars connect Tiras to the Etruscans who preceded the Romans in Italy and influenced their civilization significantly. The maritime Tyrrhenians mentioned in ancient texts also appear to preserve linguistic elements of the name Tiras. These connections explain the Indo-European character of these southern European populations, despite their geographic proximity to non-Japhetic regions. What makes these connections so remarkable is how they've been preserved not just in the Bible, but in the independent historical records, linguistic patterns, archaeological findings, and even genetic markers of the very nations involved. The Table of Nations in Genesis 10 isn't merely a religious text. It's the most accurate ancient ethnographic document in existence, confirmed repeatedly by evidence from entirely secular sources. In our modern era of ethnic confusion and disputed identities, the biblical record provides clarity that no other source can offer. It reveals that the diverse European nations, despite their apparent differences, share a common Japhetic heritage that explains their historical interconnections and cultural similarities. This isn't about racial superiority, but divine purpose. Every lineage from Noah has its appointed role in God's plan for human history. As we continue into the next section, we'll explore the four sons of Javan and how they established the Mediterranean foundations of European civilization, whose influence would ultimately shape the modern world as we know it. The Mediterranean legacy, Javan's sons in the cradle of Western civilization. While mainstream historians acknowledge ancient Greece as the birthplace of Western civilization, they systematically obscure its biblical roots. Genesis 10:4 reveals the crucial genealogical key. The sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. These four sons of Javan established the Mediterranean foundations that would shape Western civilization and continue to influence our world today. A divine blueprint hidden in plain sight. Elisha, whose name appears first among Javan's sons, is unmistakably connected to the Hellenic peoples who formed the core of classical Greek civilization. The linguistic connection between Elisha and Hellas, the native Greek name for Greece, is no coincidence, but divine design. Ancient Hebrew references consistently identify the Isles of Elisha with the Greek territories, particularly the Peloponnese. Ezekiel 27 verse 7 mentions blue and purple from the Isles of Elisha, a direct reference to the famous purple dyes produced in this region. Archaeological excavations across Greece have unearthed inscriptions bearing remarkable similarities to the name Elisha. Yet these findings receive little attention in academic circles intent on severing European origins from biblical history. What makes the Elisha connection particularly significant is how it explains the unique philosophical and intellectual character of Greek civilization. The very capacity for abstract thought that distinguished Greek philosophy emerged from Japheth's divinely appointed cognitive inheritance, preserved and developed through Javan to Elisha. The Greek pursuit of wisdom and understanding, which would later synthesize with Semitic spiritual insight to form Christian theology, represents the fulfillment of Noah's prophecy that Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. This prophetic merger would ultimately transform world history. The name Hellas itself contains profound linguistic connections to biblical Hebrew. When properly analyzed through ancient phonetic principles, the transformation from Elisha to Hellas follows established patterns of linguistic evolution. The preserved Greek tradition that their ancestor was Helen, son of Deucalion, their Noah figure, aligns perfectly with the biblical account, suggesting cultural memory of their true origins despite pagan corruption of the narrative. The distinctive intellectual, artistic, and political achievements of Greek civilization bear the unmistakable imprint of their divinely appointed Japhetic heritage. Tarshish, the second son of Javan, established one of the most mysterious yet influential civilizations of the ancient Mediterranean. Biblical references to Tarshish describe a wealthy maritime power known for shipping, metals, and trade. Ancient sources consistently locate Tarshish in the western Mediterranean, particularly the Iberian Peninsula. The Phoenician colony of Tartessus in southern Spain preserves both the location and the name of its Tarshish founder. Archaeological discoveries in this region have unearthed evidence of an advanced maritime civilization dating precisely to the post-Babel dispersion period, a remarkable confirmation of biblical chronology. What few scholars acknowledge is the profound connection between Tarshish and the legendary Atlantis described by Plato. The detailed descriptions of Atlantis's location, mineral wealth, and maritime power align precisely with biblical descriptions of Tarshish. Could Plato's account preserve a distorted memory of the historical Tarshish civilization? The evidence suggests exactly this, that Atlantis was not fictional, but a corrupted Greek memory of the historical Tarshish civilization established by Javan's son after the dispersion from Babel. Even more compelling is the mysterious disappearance of the Tartessian civilization around 500 BC, corresponding to the period when Ezekiel prophesied against Tyre and its Tarshish connections. This suggests not a mythical sinking, but a historical decline precisely aligned with biblical prophecy. The Portuguese and Spanish peoples who later inhabited these regions carry the genetic and cultural legacy of their Tarshish forefather, explaining their remarkable maritime accomplishments during the Age of Exploration, an inheritance activated at the appointed time in history. Kittim, the third son of Javan, is consistently identified with the island of Cyprus and related Mediterranean coastal regions. The ancient city of Chion, modern Larnaca, on Cyprus preserves his name to this day. Biblical references to the Isles of Kittim correspond precisely to Cyprus and surrounding territories. Daniel's prophecies regarding the ships of Kittim, Daniel 11:30, accurately predicted Roman naval power emerging from these regions, a remarkable prophetic precision that secular historians refuse to acknowledge. Archaeological excavations on Cyprus have revealed a distinct Indo-European presence dating exactly to the post-Babel period, confirming the biblical timeline. Cypro-Minoan inscriptions show linguistic connections to both Greek and earlier Japhetic language forms, providing physical evidence of the Kittim-Javan-Japheth lineage. The strategic importance of Cyprus throughout Mediterranean history, contested by empires and serving as a crossroads of civilization, reflects its divinely appointed position in the geopolitical landscape. Dodonym, also recorded as Rhodonym in some manuscripts, established populations in Rhodes and surrounding Aegean islands. The slight variation between D and R in ancient manuscripts reflects the fluid interchange of these consonants in Semitic languages rather than contradictory accounts. Ancient Greek traditions connecting Rhodes to their earliest ancestry preserve cultural memory of their Dodonym heritage. The remarkable Rhodes Colossus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, exemplifies the architectural and artistic genius inherited from their Japhetic lineage. What makes these 4 Javanic lineages collectively significant is how they established the Mediterranean foundation for Western civilization. The philosophical traditions of Alicia, Greece, the maritime innovations of Tarshish, Iberia, the metallurgical advancements of Kittim, Cyprus, and the artistic contributions of Dodonym, Rhodes, formed the essential components of classical civilization. When later synthesized with Semitic spiritual insights through Christianity, this Japhetic foundation would transform the world, fulfilling Noah's prophecy that Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. The distinctive cultural characteristics of these Mediterranean peoples reveal their common Japhetic inheritance. Their shared tendencies toward republicanism, philosophical inquiry, artistic expression, and maritime exploration directly reflect their ancestral origins. Even genetic studies, when properly interpreted, show distinctive Mediterranean markers that confirm the biblical account of common Javanic ancestry with subsequent regional differentiation. What modern academia deliberately obscures is that these genealogical connections don't merely explain the past, they illuminate the present and future. The current reshaping of Mediterranean geopolitics, the European Union's struggles for identity, and the prophesied end-time scenarios involving these regions all follow patterns established millennia ago in the Table of Nations. As we witness the acceleration of prophetic fulfillment in our time, understanding these ancient connections becomes not merely historically interesting, but spiritually essential. In our final section, we'll explore how these biblical origins illuminate current world events and the prophetic timeline rapidly unfolding before our eyes. Revelations that explain why this knowledge has been systematically suppressed by those who fear its implications. Prophecy fulfilled: Japhetic nations in the end-time scenario. The biblical origins of European peoples aren't merely historical curiosities. They form the essential framework for understanding today's rapidly developing global events. The prophetic timelines established in Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation depend entirely on recognizing the modern identities of ancient biblical nations. This knowledge has been systematically obscured precisely because it reveals too clearly the divine script being followed in our current geopolitical drama. Ezekiel 38:39 provides perhaps the most detailed prophetic scenario involving Japhetic nations in the end times. The prophet specifically names Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, as leaders of a massive northern confederation that will eventually move against Israel. For centuries, biblical scholars have identified these entities with Russia and its Slavic allies, an identification based not on speculation, but on the precise genealogical connections we've traced to Japheth's sons. What makes this prophecy particularly striking is how current events align with this 2,600-year-old prediction. The emergence of Russia as a major power opposing Western interests, its specific alliances with Persia, Iran, Madai, and other nations named in Ezekiel's prophecy, and its growing involvement in Middle Eastern affairs cannot be dismissed as coincidence. We are witnessing the precise alignment of nations that Ezekiel foresaw, a development that only makes sense when we understand the Japhetic origins of these peoples. Daniel's prophecies similarly depend on recognizing European nations' biblical origins. His visions of the fourth beast and subsequent kingdoms have been consistently identified with Roman and post-Roman European powers throughout church history. The modern European Union, with its roots in the Roman Empire's territory and its symbolic connections to ancient Babylon, evident in its parliamentary building's deliberate resemblance to the Tower of Babel, represents the continued evolution of this prophetic reality. The EU's current struggles with identity, sovereignty, and purpose directly reflect the prophetic description of the final kingdom being partly strong and partly brittle. Daniel 2:42. Even more remarkable is how Revelation's apocalyptic scenarios involve specific Japhetic nations. The kings from the east, Revelation 16 verse 12, the economic Babylon system centered in maritime trade, Revelation 18, and the final confederation of nations all correspond to specific descendants of Japheth in their appointed prophetic roles. The current reshaping of global alliances, with distinct blocs forming along lines that correspond to ancient Japhetic, Semitic, and Hamitic divisions, suggests we are witnessing the stage being set for prophecy's final act. Today's world is experiencing unprecedented signs of prophetic acceleration. The reformation of Israel as a nation, the shifting of global power eastward, the emergence of surveillance technologies capable of fulfilling Revelation's economic control systems, and the alignment of specific nations exactly as biblical prophecy foretold. These developments cannot be understood without recognizing the biblical origins of the peoples involved, which explains why this knowledge has been systematically removed from mainstream education and discourse. Understanding your place in this divine narrative changes everything. If you are of European descent, you are not a random product of evolutionary forces, but a direct descendant of Japheth, with a specific role in God's unfolding plan. This knowledge doesn't confer superiority. Every lineage from Noah has its divine purpose, but it does provide identity, meaning, and context for the events unfolding around us. The acceleration of prophetic fulfillment in our lifetime suggests we are approaching the culmination of the divine timeline. The specific movements of Japhetic nations, European and Russian powers, their relationships with Israel, and their involvement in Middle Eastern affairs all follow the script written millennia ago in Scripture. This isn't conspiracy theory, but careful correlation of current events with the most accurate historical and prophetic document in existence. As we conclude this exploration of European origins according to Scripture, consider why this knowledge matters now more than ever. In an age of identity crisis, where ethnic and national foundations are being deliberately eroded, the biblical account provides unshakable truth about who we are and why we exist. It reveals that history isn't random, but purposeful, not chaotic but divinely orchestrated toward a specific culmination. Our journey through the Table of Nations reveals that the Bible isn't merely a religious text, but the most accurate ethnographic record in existence, confirmed repeatedly by linguistics, archaeology, history, and even genetics when properly interpreted. The fact that this knowledge has been systematically removed from education and public discourse speaks volumes about its power and importance. In our next video, we'll explore the Semitic origins of Middle Eastern peoples and how their prophetic destiny intertwines with Japhetic nations in the end-time scenario. Until then, I encourage you to share this knowledge with others, seeking truth in these confusing times. Remember, understanding your origins is essential to comprehending your destiny in God's divine plan. Leave your comments below with your questions or insights, and subscribe for the next installment in this revelatory series on biblical origins. The truth about your ancestry has been hidden, but now it's being revealed for those with eyes to see, precisely when this knowledge is most needed. In this age of uncertainty, where many of us find ourselves questioning our place and purpose, the exploration of our ancestral roots offers more than historical curiosity. It provides profound context for our lives. As we navigate our 5th, 6th, or 7th decades, we often feel a deepening need to understand not just where we're going, but where we've come from. This search for meaning transcends academia. It touches the soul's longing for identity and purpose. Whether you view these ancient narratives through the lens of faith or metaphor, they speak to something essential in the human experience, our need for connection to something larger than ourselves. The stories of our ancestors, whether preserved in sacred texts, family histories, or cultural traditions, form the invisible threads that bind generations together across time. In today's fractured world, where division seems to multiply daily, understanding our shared origins reminds us of our fundamental connectedness. The challenges facing our families, communities, and nations today may seem unprecedented, but they echo patterns that have repeated throughout human history. Our ancestors faced upheavals, migrations, and transformations just as we do now, and their resilience lives on in us. Whatever your background or beliefs, the quest to understand your origins is not merely about looking backward. It's about finding your place in an unfolding story. It's about recognizing that your life, with all its struggles and triumphs, connects to something enduring. In this recognition lies both comfort and challenge. You are neither an accident of history nor merely an individual, but part of a continuing human journey with purpose and meaning. If you found this exploration of biblical origins illuminating, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspects of European ancestry particularly resonated with you? Do you have family traditions that might connect to these ancient lineages? Your perspective enriches our collective understanding. Don't miss our upcoming video on the Semitic origins of Middle Eastern peoples and their prophetic significance. Subscribe to our channel now to be notified when it premieres. By clicking the notification bell, you'll ensure you're among the first to access these revelatory insights. If you found value in this information, please consider sharing it with family members and friends who are seeking deeper understanding of their heritage and its spiritual significance. And remember, your support through likes and shares helps this knowledge reach those who are searching for truth in these uncertain times. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. The quest for understanding our origins is one that connects us all.